Good morning. Today is April 30th, 2024, and you've joined the Kubeflow community meeting. This meeting is being recorded and it is subject to the the CNCF Code of Conduct. Easy for me to say. Today, we're going to start off as we usually do with the release update. If there are any topics that people want to add into the agenda, feel free to either raise your hand or just shout them out as we get going past the release update. Hopefully, we'll get Stefano here and we can talk a little bit about maybe the user survey, but at least the status of it, and among other things. But first, we start with the release update. And I think Ricardo and the release team have been very busy. Do you guys want to start off and give us an update? Do you need to share anything?
No sharing at this moment, Josh. Thank you. So let's go with well 9 updates. We declared feature freeze last week, and since then we've been pushing the working groups to help us with cutting their releases so we can start manifesting because according to our original schedule, RC0 is about to be released next Monday, May the 6th. At this moment, I'm declaring this status is yellow. We have some blockers at this moment we want to tackle. We have notebooks working group that needs to get the RC release. So far, this blocker was pretty much having the working group leads to have right permissions to cut the releases, and now we're working on tracking all of the bug fixes and pretty much the bug fixes are well tracked, so we can cut the RC0 release for notebooks. I'll skip pipelines at this moment. I'll put this at the last. I would like to talk about the K-serve models web app because this one needs more attention broadly in the community because it does not only affect this current update, but we need to figure out a way to handle these models web app for the next updates. So TLDR, since K-serve has its own org, K-serve models web app, which is a specific UI for Kubeflow, was also transitioned out of the Kubeflow community to the K-serve, and no one currently maintains this code. So our blocker today is that we need to review the image to handle the last CVEs. Probably there might be some code changes as well. Then retag to the K-serve version we want to use in Kubeflow 9, which is 0.12.1. And after that, we need to figure out who should keep maintaining or if we should keep relying on the K-serve models web app. At this moment, we need someone to just help us reviewing this image, retag to 0.12.1, and then we can sync the manifest for Kubeflow 9. Pipelines working group, we had all of the features done for pipelines since feature freeze, and we're waiting for the pipelines working group lead to cut the 2.2.0 release that is expected to be released along with Kubeflow 9. Unfortunately, there are some PRs pending to get the release automation to work fine. And I don't get any updates from the working group lead since last week. So I'm trying to push them to get some updates and see if we can make it done. Cut the release until next Monday so we can finish RC0 release. So those are the current blockers we have for 19 RC0. Just a reminder, it's we're still have four, maybe 5 days, depending on if we need to work on weekend, to figure out how to unblock these 3 topics and see if we can cut the RC0 release for next Monday. This is pretty much about the RC0 release. Documentation updates is going well. We have some PRs pending for the new model registry components. We have some updated CATIB documentation. We need to work on some of the pipelines updates as well. But at this moment, it's just cutting the release for these 3 components that's currently blocking the RC0 release. I think that's all the updates so far. If anyone have any questions or any comments, feel free to chime in.
Ricardo, we should chat after this meeting.
Okay. Not a problem.
Also, regarding the Kserve, since it's based on the same code base as the other CRUD web apps, maybe we should just move it into that repo again. What I mean by that is the Kubeflow repo. Sorry, I know it's a bit crap, and I know that it would mean that it would end up coming into the notebooks repo. That's kind of annoying.
Okay, yeah.
Because I don't know, like, I guess the 2 options are create a new repo for it, which I don't necessarily think is a great idea. Or
maybe we need to sync up with the Kserve team as well.
Do they want, is it in its own repo on the Kserve org?
Yeah, there's a repo under Kserve org, but the only maintainer like that's recorded in the repo is Kimonos. So I don't know if we need their ACK to do this, since Kimonos can do this for us. Yeah, I think that we need to get some ACKs from the Kserve to make sure that we're not moving code and I don't know, without their attention.
Also, just for the pipelines working group, what was the blocker there? Sorry, because
So there's some infra testing they do before release, and they are failing because of the GKE environment. So according to Chen, he's trying to fix those problems with the GKE environment, and then he can run the pre-release tests and then cut the release for pipelines.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Awesome. Any other questions, comments? Awesome. Back to you, Josh.
So,
If you're wondering what I mean, obviously there's 2 other groups that are affected, but obviously notebooks is the primary cause of the delay here. The reason being that I only literally just got access to cut RCs and cherry pick PRs, and so on a couple of days ago. So and it's been a pretty busy week. So, but we'll try our best to over the next week get some of those PRs ready and cut a RC on the notebook side.
Sure. If you need anything from the release team, feel free to also ask for help.
If you've got people who can help review PRs, that'd be great as well. That link I sent you would be the great place to do it. This is the PR, like for the people watching, the places that I'll just put it in the doc. I'm just getting the link. The issues that I hope to get resolved and merged in. I know it says 1.8.1, but that's kind of, I mean, there's also this debate as to whether we should cut the RC as a 1.8.1 or if that would just be confusing.
Yeah, we can discuss that after meeting.
Yeah, because here's the link of the issues that don't open it, Josh, but just for other people, if you've made a PR into the Kubeflow repo and you think it's small enough but critical enough that we should cut it into 1.9, please tell me and comment it on that issue, because that's going to be where we these are all the ones that we're going to cherry pick into 1.8. Other than that, we should probably move on.
Yeah, I guess on the Kserve UI aspect or the web app, if we don't find a developer, what do we do? Can we cut it out, or what do we deprecate it? What's the?
So my
Are
question
we
is,
going to block? Let me ask this: is that a P0? Are we going to block the release on no Kserve web app?
well, clearly
It
you can
depends on
the old
our
version.
first attempt to rebuild the image, I guess. If we can, like, there's a way to audit all the libraries all the dependencies that Models Web App uses. And if it's possible to just bump those libraries to mitigate those CVEs without much code intervention, I believe we're good. But we need to try out that first and see if there are much more code changes that's required to mitigate those CVEs. So,
Also, it's not like we can't just include, this is an optional component for users. We can just include the existing version if we have to.
what do you mean by that? Sorry.
Like 1.8's version will still work.
I think because 0.10 was used by Kubeflow 1.8, right? As far as I remember, 0.10 was the latest release
It is,
that
and that was
Web App
released in February 2023. You are correct, yep.
Yeah, that's right. And since then, no one maintained this code anymore. So we don't have any developers working on Models Web App.
Yeah, this is obviously a problem. I guess there's two questions: are people using it, and B, should we just give it one release to find a maintainer and include the old version in 1.9 as well? And is there something that's broken in that or not?
From the functionality wise, probably not, but there will be a lot of CVEs and other things. I mean, the image is over a year old.
I mean, this CVE is in a lot of our images, to be honest, but those CVEs may or may not actually affect the user depending on what they are.
Yeah, but we need to find a new home for that anyway, or at least get access via Kimonos or do something about it. And we have 2 months to do this.
Why 2 months?
Until the release, I think it's in July or so.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Anyway, let's move on. Let's. So my thought process is we should confirm that the Kserve community doesn't want to maintain it, and if they don't, then we can discuss either moving it to our org or into one of our other repos, I guess, if we want to maintain it ourselves, which we may not.
Is there an issue open on this one? Yeah, okay. Okay, well, good job. Look, we have a lot of different components, and so this happens, and we need, cradle to grave, right? Software support. And so, as we start new projects, we need to remember that sometimes they end up in this state, and, we have to have a way to move them forward. Okay, any other comments on the release? And the next release meeting is Monday, and are you going then, will there be a kind of a decision made there about what to do, or when do you think the next decision point is, or what we should we be looking for from the release team? Is it should we just wait till next week to see? Is that a comfortable timing? From a broader community standpoint to find out what's going on. Does
I
that
guess-
sound right?
Well, like the
Ricardo?
next step, so that we clearly need to cut an RC for notebooks. We need to finish the builds for pipelines, and we just need to make a decision on which version of K-Serve web app is going to include in 1.9. That's probably what we need to do.
Yeah, well, is that a release blocking issue? But okay, fine. We'll pick
I
that
don't
up.
think the last one should be a release blocking issue, considering it's technically an add-on. But
Yeah.
I think the question is more, do we rip it out? You know what I mean?
Mhm. Right. Right. Or do we leave it with no support and known issues? Okay, Matthew, it looks like, or somebody had create a YouTube channel.
That's, I don't know who said that, but also one other thing, Josh, just while we're here, for people who have, I'm sitting in the other meeting telling people to join this one, if you're wondering.
I think it's me, Josh. I can cover it quickly.
Okay, go ahead, Andre. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so we just have a quick chat in the last steering committee call about where we should store our working group recordings. So it was the couple of proposals whether we should use the official YouTube channel or where we should have a dedicated YouTube channel for the working groups. So the point from James Wu was that probably for the community, it's not necessary that they want to see all the working group meetings, which means like for some cases, it makes sense to create a separate YouTube channel just for working group meetings recordings and post some community activities on the Kubeflow one, like summits, announcement, release updates, some exciting features. So we should discuss it. And we just want to hear your opinion on what YouTube channel we should use forward. Yeah, but right now the problem is all the working groups, they use their own process to upload the videos on whether it's Google Drive or YouTube or anyone else. Go ahead, Amber.
It's just the trouble that we've had, recovering Twitter and LinkedIn, as an example. If everybody creates their own, then it's really hard to track growth. It's hard to track all the stats that you can do and really see, what traction we're getting. And then if everybody is creating their own, then they need to give access to somebody, like somebody on the KSC or whatever. But because if they ever go away, how do we recover those? And so it makes it very diluted and very hard to find and discoverable and understand what is official and what isn't if everybody's doing that on their own. So maybe we should have a channel that's specifically for our community meetings or something.
Yeah, I have a similar opinion with you, Amber. Like, I think we need to, like, I know that working group serving in Kubernetes actually creates the separate YouTube channel. So from my perspective, maybe we can say Kubeflow community calls, something like this, and post everything there, right? I know the different communities follow different models, like CNCF post everything in the one YouTube channel. Kubernetes folks, they're doing other things, but we can adopt wherever we want to, right? I just don't think for the community, it makes sense to like see all these videos in the Kubeflow one, but we can discuss different
So they can be unlisted. So like right now we use the Kubeflow Dojo one, which is just this random one that was made a long time ago. We could repurpose that because I'm an admin of that and just rename it to Kubeflow community because it's got 157 videos of the last recordings. You know what I mean?
That's right. And also we have another channels, right? For training, for pipelines, for notebooks. We can of course like rename Dojo to working group, I don't know, community meetings, we can call it something. I think the question is here, do we want to separate the community related activities and the working group recordings, right? Do we want to separate?
We do. And I'll tell you why. When we were doing the tribal knowledge stuff, we delineated between the community meetings, which has haphazard type of topics.
Look, I want to thank you.
Sometimes, incorrect information being, whereas like in a presentation at KubeCon, you're gonna assume that most of that's pretty golden information, probably correct, right? So if we are going to allow people to transcribe the video information, which we create more video information than written documentation, then we probably want to help people separate the good from the less, high quality, which I'm not saying that the working groups and the community meeting are bad. They're just, they're more working topics, right?
But isn't that what tags and playlists are for? And if people have to go around and search YouTube for they have to know, one, they have to know what the name of the working group is, and then they have to know what the different segments are. But if there's just one main Kubeflow YouTube channel and we have the right tags and playlists, everything's discoverable and everything's under like one official channel. If they're all out there in different places, nobody knows what's official and what's not. And I think that's part of the problem right now is everybody just throws out anything that they feel is valuable without any thought to scaling, growth, or maintenance. And we kind of got to reel that in at some point.
I can start an issue, Amber, and maybe we can discuss different opinions and then move forward to unify this approach to make
Sounds
it less
good to me.
confusing for users. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
There's also this. I think the primary first question is: do we want to list these videos as unlisted or discoverable by recommendation? Like
From my perspective, I mean, from my point of view, we should not make it unlisted, and we should make it accessible, like in CNCF, like other working groups, like serving, badge, scheduling, SIGs, right?
yeah. It's just how
I
likely
already-
do we think someone is to have a good experience when they're served it in a recommendation? Like a YouTuber.
So we've already been doing this for 3 years for training and AutoML. So all of our videos, they're searchable on YouTube.
To be clear, the videos for this recording, for example, are in an unlisted post, yes, but they're on a playlist that's public.
Yep.
You know what I mean? But I agree that this yeah.
So we can have a follow-up. I can start an issue to get some feedback. We can move forward.
Cool.
Okay, good topic. Okay, thank you, Andre. Are there other topics here, Andre or Matthew?
Oh, we
do
can
you
move
have-
on, I believe.
Yeah, we can do it later. But yeah, I was just saying, if you have access to a social media account, specifically Amber is the only one I've added to the thing. I've created a vault in the 1Password, which you could add the credentials to if it makes sense from a security perspective, but we'll talk about that.
Okay, next topic, I guess, is making a new repo called Kubeflow Notebooks.
So Josh, can you confirm that the steering committee agreed to do that?
Yes, I asked James to create the repo. So I don't think James is on the call right now, right? James Liu and James Wu.
No,
No, they're not here. So James Liu actually tell me that they want to have a confirmation from stakeholders, but I guess like since Kamonos and you agree on this, that we can move forward, I don't see any other blockers to create a notebooks repo for you.
Yeah, because the thought process is that if at some point we deprecate all of the old things and rebrand it as workspaces, then we would just do a rename and redirect the old notebooks to workspaces repo,
Okay. You just want to do a rename in the future, right?
If that happens. That may or may not happen, Yeah.
Yeah, I think like the only concern from James was about the long-term approach from you guys, right?
So we've agreed on a structure that kind of makes sense, which is initially there'll be 2 root folders, one called notebooks, one called workspaces. And then under those will be the various components for the old notebooks and for the new workspaces. And then we'll try and, it may not be possible, but we'll try and make it so that we don't need the old notebooks folder,
Okay. Any other feedback from other notebooks working group here? If you have anyone on the call?
Kamonos is here, but I don't know if he's talking.
No.
Okay, we can move on.
Okay, does that issue or PR need to be approved or what do we need to do there?
So I will ask James for I will tell James about the final confirmation from Matthew and Kemonos, and then we can create. I think they can create a repo.
Great. Okay, next I guess is CNCF sponsorship for Docker Hub.
So I don't know who posted this.
Yeah, I think I did it. So yes, we have the Kubeflow Docker Hub accounts that we can get a sponsorship from CNCF. I think the question is like we can submit a request to get us the paid account to add more owners for this account. Just want to know if this is something which is concerning you, or we should just move forward and apply for a paid account for Docker Hub. I know we had a discussion about this GitHub registry. I think the question is for us, we don't have time to identify pros and cons of both of these. But do we have any blockers if we just use the paid Docker Hub account, right? Because it has some security vulnerability scans, right, as well. So
Well, we can use both, but like,
yeah.
there's nothing that says we can't use both, right? A lot of people push to both registry, and
Go
people
ahead.
put their hands
Yeah.
up. Yeah.
Okay,
Come on.
Ricardo, I think you're
Or
first.
Yeah. Yeah. Multiple registries maybe is worse to manage. But I would say let's see if it's possible to do this by automation. So it's just a matter of retagging an image and send to another registry. Other than that, I think it will be good if we have an alternative registry other than Docker Hub, because probably this will be a biggie for distributions when using the Kubeflow images. I can tell from our distribution perspective is that we suffer a lot with rate limits from Docker Hub. So having an alternative registry would be great.
Do we have rate limits with paid account on Docker Hub?
It's about the
That I don't
user.
know.
It's about the user, not the hoster.
Yeah, but I mean, per user, do we have any limits if we have a paid account?
No,
Like
no. What I'm saying is that the rate limits are applied based off if the user is authenticated, not so like if if the official Postgres account is hosting the image, I still have rate limits as a normal user.
Okay. I think it's worth to come on, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
I also wanted to, I think that I'm not sure about the technical detail for the rate limiting. We'll also need to keep in mind that this could become into a slightly bigger discussion because, for example, pipelines have an image for the frontend that is called frontend. So if we're going to bring everything to the same registry, we'll need to rename potentially some of the images, and this could require, like, it could be something simple as having a prefix in front of everything compared to where they come from. But this would lead to some extra like discussions like this that it would not be as simple as just in one place change the credentials and push to a different place. It might need some more discussion. That was my comment.
Yeah, I think it's a good point because you mentioned like, yes, so some components might have like multiple images and multiple subcomponents, right? Like I think we published like around 20 images for Katip, right? How to make the appropriate prefix for them. Yeah. It's a good point. So I don't know, like I can also like start an issue to track. I mean, we definitely need to compare like GitHub versus Docker Hub and what we should do for the long term, what support we want to require from CNCF, right? So
is this something that we have a time limit for when we apply and they're like apply for now or then see you in 1 year, or when we feel we have a plan, we can come and say, okay, this is our plan, we want access now, and they will give us the access?
I think we can apply. So Ricardo, point me if I'm wrong, but we can apply in any time, right?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
We can apply at any time for CNCF sponsorship, right?
I guess so. I still need to open a ticket with CNCF to get more details on that.
Okay.
we also should be designated as an official host of these images by Docker if we can get that tag. But anyway, that's a separate thing. Also, I'm just
Yes.
seeing that there's actually quite a bit of images on that repo already. So that will also cause problems, you know, to like, if we try and have a nice structure.
Yeah, we can think about structure. We have structure in every registry. So I just want to, I mean, if we make official Looker Hub, for me, it makes sense, like similar to PyTorch, TensorFlow. But I mean, I'm open to other suggestions here. But,
I think the rate limits are going to be a problem for users. So the default images should have to be GitHub because they're the only, like GitHub and GCR, and GitHub makes more sense because it's an open source project, have to be the default by the manifests, you know, just because users will literally be unable to deploy Kubeflow otherwise.
but do we have any limits on the GitHub registry?
No,
User limit?
no, there is like abuse limiting, but like they don't, if you're not doing something clearly abusive, they won't rate limit you, no. Either on the push or pull.
I think we need to follow up offline. So I think we need to spend time to identify pros and cons of both of the trade registries and make a decision what sponsorship we will need from CNCF.
Cool.
Okay, what about this next one, this website PRS?
Let's do this one in a second because this is going to be the longest one and nothing else will get done once we do it. So can we try and blast through some other things first? Yeah.
All right, you want to talk about Feast?
Hey, it's me again, Francisco. Matt, I don't think we had a chance to meet. We might have been on an email from Willem a while back. But this was just another call, just repeating a message I had last week, which was I have an opinion about Kserve and Feast and potentially how they should work together, and from some experiences in my last few roles. So I opened up some issues. I'm going to write an RFC from Feast perspective and wanted to solicit feedback from folks here and see if there were anybody that was interested in collaborating with me on it. I have only barely started to draft the RFC. It's linked in that documentation. So, you know, it's still pretty early. So definitely lots of opportunity for folks to collaborate with me on it if you're interested. There are a couple problems I outlined specific. So if people are interested, please feel free to give that a read. Thank you.
Do you have a
Matt, you're
specific
on mute.
request?
What's that?
Do you have like a specific actionable request just for the community, like a high level request?
Yeah, anybody who would like to collaborate with me on this RFC, please feel free to comment and reach out to me, or just comment directly on the doc.
Yep. I
Small
mean,
question, and Matthew can go to your item just right afterwards. It won't take long. Francisco, nice to meet
Yeah.
you. Is it about initially the integration, how you could consume the online features from while serving, or there's more ideally, it could also be how to also have Feast deployed, because someone would need to also have some databases and potentially the web server. So is it initially?
Yeah. So that component of how to deploy Feast, I think that tends to be a lot more configurable to the individual, like to whatever it is your own setup is that makes sense for you as a company. And I probably wouldn't be prescriptive about that. What I would probably be more prescriptive on is like how these things could work together. And again, what I would say is we can probably defer that to the doc and discuss it there.
Okay.
So are you also joining, Francisco, the Kserve bi-weekly meetings?
Yeah, I do plan on starting to do that too.
Fantastic. All right. Well, this is great news. Glad to see that collaboration working. Is there model registry update?
Yep. Josh, Matteo here from the Model Registry Working Group. Just a very quick update. I just wanted to follow up on the request from the release team. We provided the image 020 alpha as it was requested to start for the cutting of the release and the feature freeze. We also onboarded some new requests coming from the manifest concerning the manifest sync script and some manifest testing. So this is onboarded and mentioned on the tracker. And I provided a link. For some reason, that link between parentheses doesn't show that there is an hyperlink, but is there. I just wanted to provide a very quick update that we're keeping tabs on all the requests that we receive. Thank you.
Are there any end users that have started to use or try the model registry? Is it to that state yet?
Not that I received, but also one thing that I'm conscious about is that until I guess that we have at least the website documentation update emerged, it will be difficult sort of like to try to funnel alpha users there to the working group. So I'm expecting for that to maybe happen sort of like in the 1.9 time frame. So as soon as the 1.9 is out, so that we can try to piggyback on the release announcement, then is where I would start to measure about that.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you.
Anything else on the model registry? All right, we'll keep going. Pipeline discussion, user perspective. What's this?
What this is, just someone wrote a comment. I don't know if they're still in the meeting.
Yes.
We give you like 1 or 2 minutes. Like, we really can't talk for long. We've got to do other things. But if you could just briefly say what you're saying.
Yeah, basically, I just want to understand, like, what's the status of the V2 pipeline V2? Like, is it vetted? Is there any big adopters that ran that in production? I just want to understand, because for context on our side, we're currently looking at migrating to the version 2 or something else than V1 because of some scaling issues. And while we are at it, we were thinking about going into V2, but now we discover along the way that it might not be that mature, at least on the Argo backend. So I just want to get a clear picture of where we are today. I wasn't able to find all the information in all the different channels we have, but I do feel like this Argo backend is at least a bit less well supported than the one from Vertex AI pipeline. So yeah, just want to know what's the current adoption, and if it's safe basically to go with V2 on Argo or not.
People are using it. Ricardo's got their hand up there.
Yeah, I think this is a good topic for discussing, not only for pipelines question, but I think broader in terms of community. My understanding, and I got that feeling as well during the KubeCon Europe, is that the new release for Kubeflow pipelines isn't a great experience among users. And it's right what Emilia said. There's this feeling that among users that V2 is not yet mature compared to V1. And I tend to agree on that, because we made a lot of V1 parity work along with V2 for releasing 2.0. So I think we should, as an action item, I think we should, as a broader community, to discuss a better experience for users when working on upgraded releases. So we'll have notebooks 2.0 coming in. I don't know if we have other components that plans to do major releases, but I think we should use that time to discuss like a better structure, a better document on how can we make these major releases as smooth as possible for users. All I know is that the experience with pipelines among users is not so good.
Yeah, cool. Thanks. I understand we can do things better, and I don't want to rabbit all on this, but I guess I didn't have an answer. I didn't get an answer. Like
So
a direct.
if what you're asking is, can you use it? The answer is that people are using it. There are differences in the API, and a few features up until pretty recently were missing. You know, I think they've been added in 2.1, a lot of them.
Yes.
But if you're asking about deploying it and upgrading, it took a lot of work to get it working in DeployKF. It's going to be 2.0 is backwards compatible with V1, right? but at least theoretically, so you can run your V1 pipelines on V2. But doing the upgrade in place is really painful. DeployKF's next version will support V2.1 in place upgrades and stuff, but with
Wait,
no.
Okay.
major-
I think it's worth to discuss in Pipe Plus One group as well, Emilio. Thank you for raising this. Definitely add your items to the agenda meeting and ask about their opinion from Pipe Plus working group.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. We can go to the next ones for sure. Again, I definitely want to talk more about this, but maybe somewhere else where we can have like an ongoing discussion offline.
Yeah, the Kubeflow pipelines working group would be the best place.
Perfect.
Yeah, and I would say that the pipelines team at least has been very positive about the 2.0 support and the scalability and the foundation work on it. So, I mean, if I was looking where to invest with Kubeflow pipelines and I was building new pipelines, I think I've heard consistently they would like you to build onto 2.0 and they'll give you support onto that, especially if you've got a scale type of question. Ricardo, you have your hand up. Did you get called on?
On the model registry topic, I don't know if folks have talked about this, but is there any work with OCI and the OCI standard to standardize delivery of different models using the OCI standard? Or
Let's
I don't
try.
know.
I mean,
where-
the answer is yes. That's in the initial RFC, whatever it's called, not the right word. But you just say what you need to say, but we need to show this last issue in a second. But
I will be very quick, Ricardo. Thank you for your question. I invite you to check out the model registry bi-weekly. We just held it yesterday. We will have it in 2 weeks. We had somebody from the ZOT project to come and discuss. It's more, I believe, a matter of integration more than tight infrastructure, because the perspective of container registry is something that ties into what is for a model registry point of view. So I can only invite you, given the short timing constraint, to join us on the model registry bi-weekly call so that I can provide more details. But you can also find me on the Slack if you want to continue the discussion in between. Matteo Mortari.
Sounds
And in the model registry Slack channel, of course.
great. Thank you. Right.
All right, a couple other topics and we'll get to Matthew, we'll get your topic. The Dallas Kubernetes meetup, which usually gets, 20 to 30 people, sometimes as many as 80, are looking for a Kubeflow presenter for June 20th. I'm glad to do it, but if somebody from a distribution who's got an economic stake in promoting Kubeflow wants to come and present, I'm glad to connect you in, but so if you've got, other business in Dallas, maybe this would be a good thing to do. Usually these are held about 7 o'clock at night up in Frisco. So that's that. Just myself or Mars are the contacts there. And then Kubeflow's user survey update, I guess we'll bring that up next time unless Stefano's got some quick update on status of that. Are we going to get a readout? What happened with the Kubeflow user survey results?
I think it's set on the next time he will provide an
Next
update.
time. Okay, fine, makes sense. Or sometime in the future. I'm just trying to figure out when. All right, Matthew, floor's yours.
yeah, so it's
But
actually
you can drive it.
Andre's proposal.
Yeah. Yes.
So effectively, the reason it's a discussion is because it is affecting, as we always like to do, it is affecting the most important page on the website, which is installing Kubeflow. Andre, can you just briefly say why you
Yes,
think there needs to
I
be a
can give
change?
introduction and I can drive it since this proposal came from me, right? So just to give you the context, right? So I've been in this community for 6 years, and right now, communicating with multiple people who are using Kubeflow in production and who see the value of the Kubeflow, see the really complex question: what is actually Kubeflow? So we try to slowly explain the power of ecosystem, the value of ecosystem, and how Kubeflow could help you to running AML workloads on top of Kubernetes. So this PR is like just telling the people that Kubeflow can be used as a platform, and at the same time, Kubeflow as ecosystem of multiple standalone components which can be used as a separate applications. So the idea is to just give a reference for users that they can use Kubeflow from distributions as the platform. They can use Kubeflow as a platform from Manifest, and they can also install standalone Kubeflow core components like training operator, pipelines, Katib, Kserve, notebooks. So the idea is to properly structure the installing Kubeflow page to make it easier for people to use the services. Just for the context, so I've been attending multiple like events in the last year. I've been attending the KubeCon in Chicago and the Kubeflow Summit in Paris this year, and also the couple of events that are happening when we spoke with the people who are using Kubeflow in production. And some of them see the value of using Kubeflow as a platform, and some of them see the value of using the individual Kubeflow components. So we have several talks from Bloomberg. I think we also have talks from other companies like IBM, who is using some of the parts of the Kubeflow. So the idea of this just, giving more visibility, especially with energy, what's happening around with Spark operator, with model registry, to give them more visibility for new components and to grow community around these individual subcomponents. So before we actually jump to the proposals, we have a few folks here on the call. So we have someone from our team. Raz, do you want to give any context, like what do you think on the Kubeflow project moving forward, and how we can drive this and help community to grow the community around the cloud native AML?
Yeah, sure. I think from my perspective, we've heard this a lot, just running into different conversation with different folks in those conference contexts and outside, where it's like, I don't really understand what Kubeflow is as a total umbrella, and they're not really sure how to use individual components when they need to use those individual components. And so I think it's kind of, let's say, maybe potentially hurting adoption in some way, just to make some supposition right there. But in general, I think allowing folks, even in the enterprise, to pick and choose what they want in a way that is, like, let's say, much more clear and straightforward, from understanding what's in the project all the way through actually then getting a release of like a subcomponent. That, I think, is something maybe worth focusing on to improve kind of overall engagement with the project. So, Andrea, hopefully that was articulate enough. Let me know if you feel like I missed anything.
Yeah, that's right. So the idea is just to provide the explanation for our users that Kubeflow is not just a complex platform. It's also the ecosystem of components that can give a value for specific, stages of AML, for training, for serving, for data preparation, for model registry, for feature store. And it's not always about all this complexity around the platform, right? So Mati, do you want to add anything else? Anyone else on the community want to add something? Go ahead.
So I agree that these are problems, right? That adopting Kubeflow is hard. And it has been hard for a long time. And that also Kubeflow has had a branding problem. These two things are completely separate problems, but they are both problems that we've had, right? Probably the biggest problems, other than maybe people needing to contribute to various components. The goal of the project, in my mind, should be to have as many people using the tools and platforms as possible and contributing to them, right? I think we all agree that that's the goal, right? Yep. So, I think you've identified that there are, I think after our discussion, we've identified that there are two very distinct user bases for Kubeflow. Ones who want to use Kubeflow as a platform, or to use it at least as the base of an ML platform, and others who want to only use pipelines, really. Mostly is that. And
but this is not true. So, I mean, when you say using on the Kubeflow pipelines, we have a different opinion, from our perspective. We know people who use training operator plus Kserve in production for large-scale enterprise AML use cases to train LLMs and to serve them. So, some of the people use pipelines, I agree, and pipelines is one of the most popular components. But we shouldn't say that other components just completely not.
I'm not saying that people don't install those other components on their own, but so there's two categories of users. Ones who want to be able to pick and choose from the tools, or just pick one tool, and ones who want all of them. Some of the components already provide ways to install their tool on its own, right? or that their tool is inherently able to do that. Like the training operator is inherently able to, because it doesn't use SDO, you know, it's just an operator. The proposal that you've raised here, I have some concerns, but that's more around the messaging it sends and the way it's proposed rather than the idea, right? I'm okay with the idea that some people want to install specific components. That's fine in my mind. My concern is that the best way for some people to install specific components will be as part of a distribution maintained by whoever their platform is. Because a lot of distributions still allow you to do that, but DeployKF, Canonical's one, Red Hat's one, you don't have to deploy everything, you know? But I'm not saying that that says we shouldn't tell people that if you want Kubeflow pipelines, if you want Katib, if you want whatever on its own, that it is allowed to do that. But there is a community branding question there too, but we can come back to why I have specific concerns with the PR in a second, but.
I'll just add, like, aside from like, let's say distributions and branding, I think just the whole idea of those things being independent entities potentially is something I think that will need to kind of grow over time if this direction is kind of taken. You know, if you're getting a whole distribution and you're using one component, like, is there enough information on how to use that one component? Right? How do we like ensure there's enough information for folks to feel comfortable taking that one component and using it and then helping us grow it, right? In the short to long term, right? I think for me that's kind of where my thinking is more mostly oriented, is how do we make those other components successful individually as opposed to logistics of like marketing or distribution, right? So I think that's kind of what Andre is saying already, but I just want to kind of reinforce that.
Yes, like, sorry, comments, like, I see you have your hand. Just like one point, I wanted these components to shine, right? I want to grow the community around Spark operator, around model registry, around training operator, and show the real AI ML value of these components for the end user, right? So when people say, I want to deploy PyTorch in Kubernetes, I want to run training with PyTorch, they go to training operator. When people say, I want to run, like, for example, like PyTorch serve on Kubernetes, they go to kserve. Similar to things that apply for model registry. So it's like a layer between the ML ecosystem and cloud ecosystem, and we build this layer, right? It was originally how Kubeflow was designed in the history when Google open sourced it as a TensorFlow operator plus notebooks on top of Kubernetes. Go ahead, Kemos. You have your hand.
I only wanted to ask, do we also have maybe results from surveys to also get a feel of how many people also use the. I also agree. I'm not against the proposal of also making the component sign. I'm only curious if we have some measurable numbers that can help us know where to put this direction on. Like, it could be something like, do you deploy dedicated components, and potentially, if yes, at least so that we know what are the combinations that people like to prefer. Because that, even if we go in that direction, that could help to know, oh, so we see a lot of people use training operator with kserve, so maybe some of the tutorials can be bundled around those and expose some of the use cases.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think we work with Stefano to ask the user survey on this as well, Kimono. So we kind of like structure the survey to ask about these specific questions. And I think Stefano wants to do some follow-up survey for the specific use case on the combination, right? As you said, like kserve plus training, or maybe pipelines plus kserve, right? So
those are important questions, but I think the more important question is, how do we present ourselves as a project? And I agree that Spark Operator especially gives us a bit of a problem, which is that it's a really big project that has its own community completely independent of Kubeflow that we now own. And this means that we don't want to kill that. So we want to do both things. We want to be able to say, make it part of Kubeflow, you know, as a platform, but we also want to make it able to live on its own. Those two things are in inherent tension, right?
Yeah, that's right. And my product, go ahead, John, sorry, go ahead.
No, one quick question. So what, I just want to understand, what are the cons in having both of these tracks in parallel, right? Because I see that both of these tracks are really parallel. What is the real problem in supporting components standalone? And also for users who actually want the platform, they can actually go via distribution and be publicized both, right? And there are users for both sides.
Yeah, and my product thinking was, we have a Kubeflow platform as the product, and we have a Kubeflow components as the product, like Kubeflow Katib, Kubeflow Spark operator, Kubeflow model registry, right? and we can grow the community around both of these areas, right? And distributions. So Mario said, and point me if I'm wrong, but you said like distributions can also be used to deploy individual components, right? So this was your point about, right? And your thinking is like if people want to use, for example, Kserve, they can go through the distribution to deploy the Kserve, right?
So also remember with most of the standalone components, with the exception of ones that are, as I said, inherently standalone, you don't get any multi-user or user authentication or profiles. You don't get the profile controller, which is what a lot of people do find value in, right? With the standalone versions.
Yeah, but it's only problem with pipelines plus notebooks, right? Not like
there are other considerations like access scoping, right? It just depends on what the user experience is, right? And that's my definition of the distinction, right? Which is you either deploy the dashboard and the profile controller or you don't, right?
I think we have more sense. So yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I kind of understand Patty's point. But go ahead, Andre.
I think Amber, I think you were first, right? Or Josh?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, if we look at this, because all of us work for, most of us work for enterprise level organizations or organizations with product. And you look at Kubeflow as a product, and then you break it down into its components. There's no reason our messaging can't be, this is Kubeflow, and this is the modularity of Kubeflow. And these are what you can do if you want the whole or if you want a piece. And if we explain that well enough, then we don't have to worry about what our messaging really is, other than we know that people can deploy it as a whole from us. People can deploy it from the distributions, or they can take each individual component. Again, the modularity of it is part of its beauty and its power. And so if we craft the message correctly and we diagram it out correctly, then that kind of eliminates all of this confusion. And I think we're all saying the same thing. It's just, how do we want to document it? I don't think any of us are disagreeing, but the true power that I see in this, and what I've been told, and Stefano can relate on the user surveys, is the fact that you can take it as a whole in all of its complexities, or you can take it as each module, or each module of it. And if we do our documentation correctly, we can eliminate this confusion. So I think it gets back to, how are we going to document it and market it? So think about, from your company, how would your company market the modularity of this and the overall power of Kubeflow? And then we can come up with messaging.
I totally agree with you, Amber. And I think, like, again, the main story, giving the value of the AML value of the Kubeflow components to our end users. Go ahead, Josh. Sorry. Go ahead.
So I kind of have a different approach on this one, and of course, but I think the value of the community is the community itself, not the code. I think the code is important, but I think it's our experience and best practices and the fact that you can have discussion. The code, more than likely, if you're going to deploy it into an enterprise environment, it's going to be modified in some way.
I think it's valid. That is why, like, it's always hard to open source a control plane, right? Like, back to a point, like, around the profile controllers, Matthew. Like, I know many people who use standalone components and they have their own profile or internal implementation. They will never open source and give the specific value, like AML value, by using these components makes sense for me, like, to grow the community, right? To grow the community around Spark operator, around model registry, around training operator, right? Like, sometimes people don't need the profile control, right? Sometimes people don't need the central dashboard.
So I really think the best way to, when you have a problem that's hard to solve, you should think about it from the user perspective, right? You should say, in my mind, there's three categories of users here that we've kind of got floating around. There's people who want an ML, they just want to do ML on Kubernetes. Everyone fits into that category, right? That's definitely, let's agree that happens. So then you've got people who don't have an ML platform at all right now. You've got people who already use Kubeflow, and you've got people who already use one of the components that we've recently adopted, right? That's kind of the three categories of people. And And when I say using Kubeflow, let's split that into the two, like you said, people who use the control plane and ones who don't. Personally, those are such different user journeys that I think they deserve different pages on the website. That's for the two that you said. That's kind of what I was saying. That there's the Kubeflow as a platform, meaning you could still compose it into different things, but you get that control plane. And I think that's the distinction, which is a distribution or the manifest. So those two. And then you've also got, I just want Kubeflow notebooks. I just want Spark operator. I just want training operator. But I don't want the control plane. Again, the distinction is the control plane. Do we agree that that's kind of the fork?
Yes, it's like completely different. Yeah, I agree with you. That makes sense. I just think we need to explain it like this different. It's like we need to explain what is Kubeflow platform, what is, I think I said it already, but what is like Kubeflow standalone components, and then we can have maybe pages to install both of them, right? And explain the user journey around. Like if you just need the tool for training, you go to this way, right? If you need tool for running data prep, you go to this component, right? But like the ML lifecycle, I think we're already starting this. So I'm trying to create the ML lifecycle as part of our working group AI white paper. So I try to add the same kind of lifecycle in the Kubeflow documentation. So we can say this is ML lifecycle with data prep, training, tuning, serving, feature engineering, and other points like observability, right? And we can say we have these components to address this problem in the ML lifecycle. And it will be very easy for users to understand what tool they need, or they need the whole like end-to-end experience, right? If they, don't have enough engineering resources to deploy on their own, right? The control plane.
I think the control plane is the distinction. Like
so,
I think both of them address the lifecycle, right? Like, so you can compose your own platform with your own control plane, or you can use a distribution with its control plane, or you can use the kind of control plane that we have open source, right? Like that, like the distinction is not whether we address the lifecycle. Those are both using ML platform control plane version and individual component version still helps the user address that problem, right?
Yeah. So I think we have another hand. Kirash, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, not all components are equal, right? Not every single component, makes sense to be used standalone. Model registry, for example, you could use standalone, but it only makes more sense when you use it with other things, notebooks, and serving and so on. And like you said, Andre, right? Some components come in at different phases of the ML model, development and deployment lifecycle, right? So there might be combinations of components as well, right, that make more sense depending upon like the maturity level of a project, as it goes along on its journey of becoming a complete ML platform, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah. How to, like making the appropriate integrations is like a separate question, right? For example, like how, I don't know, PyTorch integrates with NCSL, right? Or how other like ML communities integrate together. So we haven't like spent a lot of time to thinking about how to explain this to our end users that, hey, these components also can play together, right?
Yeah. I think there's like a missing opportunity there, right? Where we have, like I was saying, like take the user on a journey, right? Like, oh, you're starting here. These are the components that you can start with, because these are your immediate needs, and start with notebooks, do this, do that, and then as you mature, you start doing more and more. You start adding more and more Kubeflow components.
Exactly. And I have the same like thought process. Like people, when they go into our community, they start with small, right? They see, hey, they have a tool for training. They go to these specific components. Then they try to see, maybe I need some like notebooks. I deploy Kubeflow notebooks. And then they understand, hey, I need multi-tenancy support. And I don't want to like build my own. I go to distributions, right? So the user journey should be maybe from the start all the way to our distribution support, if they want like end-to-end experience.
Exactly.
Any other? I know we over time a lot, but any other comments from the community here?
So the proposal, okay, we need to address the specific proposal at hand. The problem with the current proposal that you raised, Andre, is that it will effectively, I see it destroying the user journey for new users of Kubeflow. So it rearranges the installing Kubeflow page in a way that I don't think aligns with the current view of the project of how Kubeflow should be used. But specifically, if we think about it from the new user who says, I have a Kubernetes cluster and I need ML tools,
So what? Sorry, why it breaks if we just explain what is standalone components and what is the platform, right?
well, it's like the ordering of the page is what breaks it.
No, but
like,
we have introduction page. Like we can draw the ML lifecycle. We can there explain these components for model registry, for training, for serving, for tuning. And then we have a section which explain what is Kubeflow platform, right? As we discussed with Hirash, right? Basically, what is Kubeflow platform? And on the installation page, we can think about if I actually have 2 pages, right? As you said, like basically 1 page for Kubeflow as a platform, another page Kubeflow standalone components, and then reference to the specific, installation guides, right? We just need this kind of like entry point for users. And as Hirash said, like we need to start with the value, right? With the end user value for the components. What is the value for pipelines? What is the value for KTIP, right? What is the value for KServe? Basically, we need this ML lifecycle story. Go ahead, Amber.
Why don't we do this like you would any other website revamp? We say, here's the date we want to go live with it, and we backwards plan into that. And so if we want to make all these changes, and there's a lot of discussion and a lot of changes that are being put forward in this, and we know there's a lot of work that needs to be done on the website. So why don't we come up with a plan that's like, if we want to go by the 1.9 release, or do we want to go for Kubeflow Summit in Salt Lake, whatever that date is, that gives us time to do this right, to identify those personas, to identify the lanes, to correctly say, this is how we want to grow, what is our messages in each of those personas, and do it right, instead of just kind of throwing it out there and piecemealing it and the message doesn't flow. So why don't we come up with a plan to just redo the website and reorg it the right way instead of just piecemealing it?
Yes, and we already have some sections. We just need to update them, because if you go to Kubeflow website, if you go to introduction, like when Google actually added some of these pages, they already have the ML, like some sort of the ML lifecycle, which is a little bit outdated in the architecture page. So they already have an explanation of what components address which stage of ML lifecycle. We just need to redraw this, right? And I agree with you, Amber, like we need to move slowly with the appropriate, user, to not confuse the users. But at the same time, like we just need to stop confuse people when they ask what is Kubeflow, right? And it's not just the platform which contains all these pieces all together, right? I had it many times. I can give you an example. So when people got confused, if they need to just use training, they have to install the whole platform, unless like we explaining them this to them, right? So this is why initially, and I'm okay with wording here. I'm not saying my language there is perfect. Like we can definitely change it, but at least updating, like giving them this option, right, to install components standalone.
So if the singular proposal is to just add a new section to the installing Kubeflow page, it shouldn't change anything else about the page. It should just add that section.
You mean like you mean like these warnings and this this notes that we have?
What I'm
right?
saying is, like, if the goal is just to have a new section, which is pretty much what my PR does. Like, I know that it adds some notes that maybe you disagree with the wordings, and that's fine. But like what I'm saying, and we can discuss that. But what I'm saying is, for most users, even if it shouldn't be the case, for most users, we are presenting Kubeflow as a platform, right? So it should still be the primary thing on the page, is what I'm trying to say.
But why might you said this? Like for most users, we present Kubeflow as a platform. Like, how do you make this statement?
It's just what we're doing right now. So what I'm saying is, this is a change if we decide to do something different.
You mean like how we've been like presenting this for a long time, right? Not like about the reality, how people actually use Kubeflow, right? Kubeflow components.
Well, I don't think we have enough information to really go either way on the actuality of what people are doing. But what I'm trying to say is that whether or not it should be the case. So there's two questions. Are you wanting to propose that we stop presenting Kubeflow as a platform? Or are you wanting to propose that we just have a new section on the installing Kubeflow page? Because there's
No,
two very distinct problems.
Yeah. I think we should present Kubeflow as a platform, as I said, and we should definitely do it and to show the distribution. I think the question is like initially, unless we have like the proper user journey and like the life cycle kind of thing, explanation, what we should do for the short term, right? Should we just add another section and then see how it goes, and then update the introductory page, the architecture page, and other things, right? Or we should like move the what is Kubeflow and what is Kubeflow platform to other like pages right now before making this change. But I just want to like avoid this kind of like warning that, because I think I already said this to the PR, like to say that this is for advanced users, so we're not going to provide support because this is not true, right?
For the manifest, that is true, definitely. Like we can't support a platform on it. Like we're an open source community, right? We're not able to support infinite deployment use cases. But we're not saying that the component installation is advanced. It's just saying that it's different. That's all that my note says on my PR. But
yeah, Julius, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it benefits the community as a whole if the manifests are used a lot, because this also goes then into each distribution. So I wouldn't focus entirely on the distribution part. So for me, it's quite important that we have enough heavy power users and it's advertised. They're not just the distributions. This is also a question of ordering them. Yeah. I know for some, if you're novice users, if you're inexperienced, yes, then maybe the distribution is right. But it doesn't mean that working directly with the manifest, which gives a higher probability of also committing there and testing stuff, which in turn helps all distributions, not just a single distribution. I think this is something we have to keep in mind.
Yeah, and we also need to keep in mind that some companies will build platforms on top, right? Some companies they're already actually building this. So we have examples how people build platforms on top of Kserve, or on top of pipelines, or on top of training operator, right? So we have precedent in big, large enterprises who don't even use manifest or distributions, right? And this is not just a very specific example, right? This is just reality that we have today. But I still see a lot of value in distributions for people who just don't have enough resources, right, to deploy the control plane on their own, as I said a couple of times before. So I think I'm okay to consume your your feedback. Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to jump in for 1 second. I think I'm just going to say like find what this would mean in terms of like, okay, well, how would it look on the website? What philosophical change would there need to be when you're developing a component to ensure you're considering like the standalone use case, and then come back to the team and discuss again. But sounds like one of the key things to answer is what should we do on the website, right? What proposal should we make there, in addition to kind of like giving folks a little bit more context on what we think maybe marketing or like supporting the standalone path would mean for folks day to day as the developers and also as end users. It seems like directionally most people are aligned. It's a matter we got to get into some details, and I don't think we need to solve those details here. But...
So there's someone just wrote a comment here, which is that there, in addition to the value provided by each component, there's value in going from not having any components to having some, and that's part of the value of a distribution. I think the 3 key values of a distribution, though, are that they want someone to support them, right? That's the primary reason. Like they use a platform, they want someone to support. That's why you engage a vendor. That's what a vendor is. The second part is saying, I don't have anything, I want to get something. And that last part is still available to them, right? Selectively choosing components. Anyway, the point is.
So sorry, go ahead.
All I'm saying is the main page that new users come to, and if people who were new at some point recently can please chime up if they want in the chat, is going to be the installing Kubeflow page. And that's why it says at the beginning, what is Kubeflow? How do I install it? If you want to add a third option to the how do I install it, which is install some of the components on their own, especially Spark Operator, I think that makes sense, and how we present that should be a question. But I think it should clearly go package distributions, standalone. There's a question of whether we group. So there's clearly package distributions and manifest, which are kind of two similar options for the control plane. And then there's individual components. We could either split those into 2 pages.
So yes, we can split it to install Kubeflow platform, install Kubeflow standalone components, right? As we said. And before that, explaining what is Kubeflow platform, what is Kubeflow standalone components, right? In the introductory page, maybe, right?
Well, introduction of both of those pages. Like you just have each page say, what is Kubeflow as a platform? What is Kubeflow?
We can do this, yes, we can do this as well. That makes sense. But again, like we need to build these building blocks. We need to have these building blocks for people who want to build distributions. Because the problem is you have the value of the building blocks like Kubernetes. People like distributions will do everything by themselves. They will build ECAS, they will build Gkey, they will build another engines on top, right? Which will provide the way of running this in production, right? From their perspective, opinionated perspective, right? But we should not like endorse, like, and I mean, the community just should build these building blocks for specifically AI/ML use cases, right? Yeah, so
again, follow the user journey, right? The user journey is that there is a small number of people who want one thing. We don't know how many want each thing. The point is there's some people who want platforms and support from enterprises, and others. Then there's some people who just want Kubeflow pipelines / Kubeflow training operator, whatever. We should just have a page for each of those user journeys and explain why you may or may not fit into each one at the beginning of each of them. That's my, and so right now the installing Kubeflow page is that first platform one. It is physically what it is right now. Maybe it could be improved and discussed as a separate discussion, but it is a difficult thing. It's a balance because there's not many other tools in the world like Kubeflow. That's why it's hard to explain what it is.
That is why we don't want to split it to 2 pages, right? Like why we don't want to split it to Kubeflow as a platform, Kubeflow standalone components, right? And explain the different usage, the different patterns, right, of the usage. And starting from the ML lifecycle in the introductory page or in architecture, right? To explain actual lifecycle of ML for, I think Ricardo said it about like the people who actually just try to get familiar with AI, right? So many companies right now don't know about like the ML lifecycle. They're just new in this field. And we will educate them and tell, hey, we have a tool for you to solve this specific problem, right? You can use it as like standalone tool, and you can use it as part of distribution of Kubeflow, right? I think like initially first step from my perspective would make a lot of sense. And then we can, working on improvements of how we actually guide our users, right?
Which is the first step? Which first step?
Like basically have 2 separate pages, which has install Kubeflow as the platform, install Kubeflow standalone components, right? And then we're going to have as content there, and the introductory section. What is Kubeflow platform? What is Kubeflow standalone components, right?
So there's 2 things we should do if we're going to do that, which is confirm with each of the components that they want to encourage people to use them on their own. Like some components may or may not want it. I don't know if pipelines wants it even. People do it. They seem to provide a guide, but I don't know how happy they are about that. If they're willing to support it, because that does mean you're effectively supporting every possible deployment scenario, you know what I mean? For the users.
I agree, yes, that totally makes sense. I mean, if component will decide to not be listed here, I think we should be fine to remove them, right? When we can make a note that some of the components cannot be deployed as a standalone, right? Can only be deployed as part of Kubeflow platform, like central dashboard, right? Right now cannot be deployed standalone, right?
And we should also explain what the differences you get, whether it's as a platform versus individual. So like pipelines, as I say in my note on mine initially, you don't get multi-users, right?
So from my perspective, this should be part of the installation of pipelines section, right? And if people click there and see this
there
warning,
should be an overview, right? Like there's some very big distinct differences, which is there's no multi-user support when you install a single component, but you can, because like effectively the question is not, are you installing a single component? Because you can do that as part of a distribution. It's, do you want a control plane, which gives you multi-user support, authentication, and profiles? That's actually the question to something, and also support, but that's separate.
Okay, so I think like it's from my perspective, it's the responsibility of pipelines working group to decide how they want to guide their users, if they want to provide standalone support, right? Like if they say that, for example, for us, it doesn't make sense to people to install this tool standalone, okay, we can delist them or and on their, documentation side, add the warning in the overview or somewhere, right? I just don't think we should like overwhelm the installing page, right? Because this is the responsibility of the specific components to guide the user appropriately if they want to install the standalone, right? Like installing should be very simple. Like if you want to go pipelines, you can go to the pipelines documentation. If you want a Kserve, you go to Kserve documentation, right? It's very similar to Spark operator. Back to our discussion before, documentation should be maintained by the working group owners, right? The documentation of specific components, right? And I know over time, feel free to drop. Like I have few minutes to discuss, but sorry about it.
So I do want to get on the page somewhere on the website information about installing Spark Operator at some point. Like that's probably the most critical one to make sure that it's on the website. Because it's how most people will find out that we're even involved, But all I'm saying, okay. There's also this other question, which is that this project steering committee or whatever, someone should agree that we actually want to encourage users so formally to adopt specific components on their own, but that's a separate discussion.
So from my perspective, if we want to make Kubeflow successful for the long term, we should. Like, because right now the problem is like most people think that Kubeflow is just a pipelines tool. And we have this kind of like weird thing called central dashboard. We'll try to like organize all these pieces together, but they don't really see the whole value of the Kubeflow ecosystem. And that's, we know the actually reference architecture for end-to-end enterprise-ready AI lifecycle. We know how to run large-scale training. We know how to run large-scale inference, which is right now most people are searching for, right? With a new kind of like, Kubernetes initiative with serving working group, device manager working group, what we see in the badge, more people choose Kubernetes as the tool to run a large-scale AI ML. And we can be the community who can actually provide this, tooling and building blocks to run AI on Kubernetes, right? Not on Slurm, not on Ray, not on any other like cluster-based technology, but just on Kubernetes in a proper way, in the right way. And I just believe like if we explain this properly for end users, we will grow our community much faster. Rather than be focusing on the platform specific, aspects of Kubeflow. And I don't think we should don't invest time in this. I just think that if we want to grow us, we need to move towards these directions as well. I hope that makes sense. Especially from large vendors, right? From people who has like a lot of engineers who can work.
You have to understand that's a very small amount of people. While they may be big users, like the amount of there's much more small companies than big companies in the world, But
yeah, but I mean, we need active people who can actually, do the code, right? We need people who can maintain the components, right? But unless we show the value of the, of our building blocks, we cannot grow the community around this, right? And this is like the main problem, right?
Well, there are two ways to get contributors, right? One is users, which is like what you're saying, right? And the other is people who are making money somehow from that thing existing and then contribute resources to make sure that that thing continues existing. That's how, and that second model is how I venture to say every successful open source project is supported. Very rarely there is like a one or two groups of people who are like, I'm just so dedicated to making Postgres work, and they're great. I love those people. And Linux similar. But Linux also has thousands of contributors who are paid to be there, right?
That's right. But I mean, again, we should grow the community around the specific components, right? Like we should, I mean, unless we want to, because right now, like for example, the Kserve, right? Kserve community maybe like in terms of the usage, maybe much more valuable compared to other, components, because like they grow they see this as individual tool, and they grow the community around Kserve. And right now people see this as a de facto standard to run inference on top of Kubernetes, right? And this is like very like adopted on enterprise level compared to other like alternatives. I just want to see the same thing for other like components, especially with energy around model registry, Spark operator. If Feast want to have more, you know, collaboration with us.
It feels like the main thing you're actually asking is about branding. But then
So-
there's a branding plus the ability to actually follow through and have a component be treated as an individual thing. But like, you know, that's the thing you're actually asking. It's like, I don't want the word Kubeflow to be confused. I want Kubeflow cat to be a brand. I want Kubeflow Spark
Yeah, it's
operator
like
to be a brand.
I think I said it's like Apache, so similar to Apache, right? So all the people know Spark is Apache Spark, right? All
Well,
the
they
people
just
know
call
like
it Spark, right? They don't call it Apache. Well, some people call it Apache Spark.
I mean,
you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, but it's like a branding and some sort of, you know, like placement in addition to Spark, right?
So what does it mean for a component to be part of Kubeflow? This is obviously the bigger, and that's really probably more in line with we need to decide that, right? Which I think the answer is that I think right now the only true answer is that it's developed on the Kubeflow org, right? That's really the only true answer. But
I think we
maybe
can
that
discuss
shouldn't be.
But I mean, eventually should like specifically address the part of ML lifecycle on top of Kubernetes, right? Like if you just store, right? If you need like model registry, if you need like training capabilities, right? If you need data prep tool, and you want to be the part of the broader Kubeflow ecosystem, right? You can basically like, you know, grow the community with us. It's a harder question to solve because, as you said, like we don't have a lot of alternatives, right? Right now on the market. But I guess like
the
it's
alternatives. So in my experience, the alternative is not open source. Like it's either completely building it yourself, or in that extreme case, like you said, or it's buying something from someone, right?
Mhm.
And you could still be buying something from Kubeflow, no, not from us, but as part of Kubeflow. But you know, SageMaker as a platform, Vertex as a platform, other vendors exist. You know, like that's the alternative in inverted commas, right?
Makes sense, but I mean, like, just us as the community, we need to just invest time in the ML value, right? In the not like from my perspective, like we have like, you know, other opinions, but I think like if you want to like, you know, like find this adoption on the like distribution level and the platform level, we need to basically build these building blocks, right? Like we need to show like the value of using KTIP or using KSurf, right?
And that's good for the platform too, right? Like if each of these tools gets their brand, you know, which is like that Kubeflow notebooks is about this, right? And because that's what decides adoption, right? Right. Getting it deployed is hard, and that's something that this is why the installing Kubeflow page is interesting. But the thing is that someone should be able to. It should be reasonable that when someone should think, I want Katib, you know what I mean? And like, because that's the solution to my problem, right?
So
is that what you're saying?
Yes, and I mean, and we already kind of like we work in the last 2 years to improve the experience of using these Kubernetes tools, and we kind of like collaborate with Batch working group to see how we can build this Pythonic-based experience, similar to Ray, right? Because why Ray is like very popular is because it's very easy to use. You just have your Ray cluster locally, and you can scale it all the way to, you know, large scale Kubernetes environments or just bare metal, and you can run the same Python code everywhere. So we want to give the same experience for other components. Like, I mean, I'm talking about like, for example, training or tuning, right? I have this PyTorch code, I want to scale it. We just give it the SDK and you can basically run this and scale it all the way to multi-node, multi-GPU training, right? So the thing is like, I agree that for some, like specifically for pipelines right now, it's like almost impossible to maintain it by itself, but it's a problem of how to make pipelines simpler, right? Simpler to install, simpler to deploy, and simpler to, you know, integrate. And this is what I hope Pipelines Working Group can spend time and, you know, try to make it.
I don't think they're incentivized to. Like I'm like, as a matter of pure incentives, the pipelines people are a mixture of people working for Google and for users, right? Those are the two groups people contributing to pipelines. And users already have it deployed, so they don't need to think about that aspect anymore. And the Google people obviously are maintaining it because that's the API for Vertex pipelines. But
That is why we need more diversity, right? We need more people be involved in the pipelines working group. Like I know that we already have some contributions, but we need more people to, if they want to have this, to make it simpler, we need to find people in the community who want to contribute directly to the pipelines, right? And I mean, it's up to pipelines working group to decide. But from my perspective, like if people really want it, they need to contribute, right? And make it possible, make it pipeline simpler to deploy in a multi-tenancy mode, right?
But that's like hard, man. Like there's a reason, like deployment is about relationships. It's about trust, right? Like people could deploy Kubernetes open source, right? But they don't. No, literally no one does that. Maybe 1 in 1,000 companies might do that. I come back to, that's kind of a separate discussion. I come back to the point that someone just commented, by the way, which is that this is an interesting point. I hadn't thought about this. Apache, right? Apache is a tool, but it's not confused in the same way that we are, right? So like Apache Spark is not, like the problem is that we've both used the name of an organization effectively and the name of a platform as the same name.
Yeah, you mean like it's hard to make a product like from this specific, naming problem, right? So like, because
even if we say Kubeflow platform, that's still going to be confused as like, oh, that's a new component of Kubeflow, or that they'll just have no idea what we're talking about.
No,
exactly. Yeah. Is it a community, or is it a community where like a bunch of projects come together, or is it an actual product and a platform that you can deploy that offers all the?
It's an ecosystem. I think the ecosystem is this word that comes up a lot, right? Like back in the day, there was the Hadoop ecosystem, which was Apache tools, yes, but and the like there's the community aspect, yes, but like the thing that the community is facilitating is this ecosystem of Kubernetes-based tools, right?
Yeah, and one of the value propositions could be that we also solve the integration problem, right? We make sure that all these components play together and stuff. So if you use Kubeflow platform, then you're guaranteed that all of these things will play together. You don't have to start from scratch where you're trying to put these projects from different communities together.
That can be, again, that is really hard though, because it's so specific to the user. But there's also, we're not an island, right? There are other tools that people will want to use.
No, but it's up to their community, right? Like I think we need to be focusing on the specific components which is part of core.
They're part of, right.
Right. Exactly. So I mean, there are millions of open source frameworks, right, and tools that people can use. Like we need to descope our vision and be focusing only on the core and our reference architecture to address end-to-end ML lifecycle.
I don't know if that's what the project should do. I think that may be what you should do as an individual, but I don't think that's what the project should do. I think the project should do two things. Should facilitate your ability to do that for your components that you maintain, and also facilitate people who want to sell distributions, right? The Kubernetes community facilitates the distribution of Kubernetes. The people who lead the project, in fact, in general, are the ones selling it because they have the resources to actually contribute. But what I'm trying to say is like, the project overall should not, it needs to grow the community projects, like you're saying, to support you to do what you're saying. And it also needs to enable people to actually sell Kubeflow, or to at least make it easier to deploy, that someone would be willing to pay for it.
But what is I mean, if we make this building block very easy to install and provide the, the guidelines for these people who want to sell it, what is the reason for them to build these distributions on top? What is the problem of them to build the distributions on top, right? Like if we make it very simple for them to, like similar to Kubernetes building blocks, right? Kubernetes is different, I agree, but right, you can construct the distributions on top of the Kubernetes control plane, on top of the all these components that provide by the core of Kubernetes, right? And you can build additional tools like Elastic in terms of EKS, right, or GKE specific related capabilities, right? Like the question is like, when you say about like Kubeflow project, what exactly do you mean? Like, do you mean the community, or?
What I'm saying is that like if you think of it as an organization, like the Kubeflow org, right, which is the collective of all of us, our goal
Okay.
we'll all have different goals, right? Some people are here because they use the tools. Some people are here because they want to sell the tools. Other people are here because they want to learn, whatever, right? The organization's goal should be to facilitate the people who we care about being here to exist, right? To continue doing what they want, right? And so I think that it all comes back to the users though, right? We don't have a community unless there are people using the tools, right? That I think we do. That's why I always bring it back to that.
That's right. I agree. And if we make it very easy to use, we will see more users, right? Because I think the architecture, I mean, I think I said this several times before, but the infrastructure is already there. Like Kubeflow can be used to train LLMs. Kubeflow can be used to, serve it on a large scale enterprise level. Like the problem is like, unless we make it very simple to use and install as the individual tool and then as a platform, like that make it like that will grow the adoption. And like I want to hear like other distribution opinion on this. I know we don't have much people here, but I guess that, again, we can make this small steps to separate this and to promote on the same level of platform level and also the components level. And then just to see whether we need to change it, right? Because the one thing, specifically like why we're splitting this Kubeflow repo, to explain that Kubeflow is not just a complex tool, right? It's ecosystem, right? Of building blocks that you can use as the platform and you can use individually, right? And this is what we try to do here, basically.
Like, all I'm trying to say is that I know it might be slightly distant from the way that you experience the Kubeflow community because you develop a specific set of tools, right? But like the majority of the way people experience Kubeflow is from the outside. They're not in the community at all. They're a user or an observer, right? And so the messaging that we send to them is confused right now. Absolutely. I agree with that. That is confusing and strange to both users and observers to the community. So fixing that is a problem. We should try and fix that. I don't know that the installing Kubeflow page is the place to do that, but the maybe blog posting, maybe other things. But the second problem you list, which is that telling people that you can install components of Kubeflow on its own is important. We should tell people that. Not all components will be able to be done, and also, again, there may be differences. So my recommendation is that we literally don't touch the installing Kubeflow page. I mean, there is some updates that we could do to maybe if we disagree on the aspect, because installing Kubeflow should be really installing Kubeflow components, like not like that. It's not the right word. It's like using Kubeflow. No, using Kubeflow is the wrong word again. No, it's like the people who want an ML platform, right? That's what I'm trying to say.
Why?
No,
I mean,
that page. No, I don't know what it should be called. What I'm saying
why
is
we
that's what
cannot have two pages? Like, what is the problem with two pages? Like installing Kubeflow platform and installing Kubeflow standalone components. Like, what is the problem in this?
No, that's what I was proposing, right? So that's that. So, but what I'm saying is the primary entry point we should still assume will be that, because for better or worse, the feeling that most people have when they think of Kubeflow, which is really all that branding is as that's SageMaker on Kubernetes. That's, you know what I mean? Like if they've never touched it, which the vast majority haven't.
That's right, but this is wrong, right? And we need to this is wrong. This is not SageMaker on Kubernetes, right?
Is
this
it not though? Is
no?
It not?
I mean, no, this is not, because SageMaker cannot use as the you cannot use individual tool of SageMaker, right?
Yes, you can. That's the whole point of it.
But can you install it on the on the bare metal? Oh, sorry, on the.
Oh no, of course not. So SageMaker is a managed service, right? And it's a brand, actually very similar, has a very similar problem to Kubeflow, which is that SageMaker and Vertex similarly is the name that those vendors have given to this collection of tools that make an ML platform. In the same way that we have the name Kubeflow, which I know is confusing. But we have the same problem, right? Which is that all I'm trying to say is that we need to compete because those are the biggest alternatives, right? Like not just those, but that those managed collective branded versions are what people compare us against. They don't compare us against.
But is it, I mean, is it, I mean, the question is like, what is the value, right? Okay, they're comparing us with SageMaker, right? And this is like why we're providing them Kubeflow platform. Again, Kubeflow platform could be the product, which people who are interesting will maintain, right? But at the same time, there is a lot of value of installing Kubeflow standalone components, right? As I said, to, for example, find alternative, I don't know, to Ray. Like maybe some people want to use directly PyTorch native on Kubernetes. We're providing them a way, right? Maybe they want to use RayServe, right? They can go to Kserve, right? Which has different use cases, right? Similar to notebooks, right? So I think there is we have benefits of both approaches. That's why like having 2 pages and having explaining on the introductory what like installation instructions you should follow makes sense to me, right? Like I don't see any kind of like problems with this. Like
so when people want to compare, they need to know what they're getting, right? And so the reason why Ray and other pipeline services and like Airflow aren't compared to SageMaker, even though that they might have a tool which is comparable, like pipelines versus Ray pipelines versus SageMaker pipelines versus, these are things that you could compare on a line, right? They are plus minuses, whatever. But users adopt ecosystems, right? And that's why we survived this many years.
No, but I mean,
even if
So
I'm not saying we shouldn't make a page like this. Don't get me wrong. That's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is that the funnel will be user hears about Kubernetes or uses Kubernetes. User wants ML platform. They start comparing ML platform ecosystems. They look at managed by Google, managed by Amazon, managed by Azure, managed by themselves. Then the funnel follows down into which of the components do I want, right? We failed that second journey right now, which is, I agree, we should improve that. And we also have this other problem, which is some of the components have never been part of Kubeflow before, like Spark, but Operator. But all I'm trying to say is that I expect the funnel will be Kubeflow as a brand, as a platform, into how do I deploy those tools versus platform, well, either way, it doesn't matter. Rather than, we could also grow the community the other way, like you're saying, which is try and encourage people to hear about things as Kubeflow, Spark Operator, Kubeflow, Kado, Kubeflow. But that's
right. The Spark community by itself might be larger than Kubeflow community right now, if you look to the reality.
Oh, probably.
That's true. Like, and how are we going to manage these things, right? Spark, like, much larger and widely adopted than Kubeflow components, like even pipelines, right? And
yeah, that it's like a reverse merger. It's like, a small company has been adopted by a bigger company, right?
That's right, absolutely.
Because
and
what are we giving but to be clear, let's reiterate why they wanted to join. It's because they didn't have a neutral governance body. And that's the value we're providing to them, right? That's what we're giving them. That's why they want to be part of this.
Also because we have a lot of expertise in managing operators. Because like when folks from Google reached out to me, they were speaking about, hey, like we're collaborating with you for several years already, and we know that you can maintain this operator as part of your neutral foundation, part of your ecosystem, right? So that is, I don't really see, I mean, I understand we can improve it in the future, but I don't see really problem right now to making Kubeflow platform page, making Kubeflow standalone components page. And in the introductory, we will explain these details, right?
Maybe it's not like installing Kubeflow components, but maybe it's just under the getting started page, we have a components of Kubeflow overview, right? And then under that, it says, these have 2 modes, right? Each of them. They have mode 1, which is running on their own in some cases. And they have mode 2, which is running as part of the Kubeflow platform, which is distributed by these vendors.
Yeah, but the problem is, like, in reality, like, users don't care. I mean, users who just go to installing, like, they just will search for installation, right? So we need to make sure that the people who never heard about Kubeflow ecosystem before, they will, read one installation page, read another installation page, or read like the sections as I did in my PR, right? About like the Kubeflow as a platform and Kubeflow as the standalone components, right? Installing Kubeflow standalone components. Like, I don't really see the problem with this, initial, changes on the single page, right?
Maybe
So-
it should be like Kubeflow distributions. Maybe that is actually the word we should use for the platform rather than platform.
Yeah, but the question is like for Julius' point, like how we make sure people can install Kubeflow from manifest, right?
Well, okay,
Because
like I know that Julius and he can say what he wants, but that's not what users are looking for in general. Like they want support, they want upgrade paths, they want things that manifest would literally never be able to provide them. I'm not saying that they're not useful. What I'm trying to say is that like manifest,
In general, we are willing to provide upgrade paths. This is what we're working towards. And yes, we have to make sure that we don't cannibalize on the distributions because somehow money has to be made. Yes. But I also want to make sure that distributions do not govern the development or the development moves towards distributions. I don't want competition in that way. I want distributions as something more or less for enterprise users.
Well, there are two different pieces of development. The distributions are unlikely to control the component development, but the problem is that it's hard. It's complicated in your specific case because your component is manifest, right? Like the ideal situation for manifest would be that the distributions, that they're a common ground to try and make it easier for people to make their distribution. That's what we originally had the idea of. Like, it's a bit weird that you ended up maintaining it while not maintaining a distribution.
You have some people who want to add, for example, basic Helm charts per component or some basic Helm charts
but like that's
can build on top.
I understand, but like really what we should do is base it around what the distributions want to make their life easier, because we as a community should not be trying, like, I'm not saying it because of my own personal interest. I'm saying it because it's not possible to support every conceivable deployment scenario. Like,
so go ahead.
You go.
From my perspective, we should invite all the active distributions, like Canonical, Nutanix, Google, people who actually want to provide updates for 1.9 and hear their opinion on the manifest, right? How they want to see this manifest moving forward.
Well, that's why like the leads, like if maybe they're not interested, that's an interesting question, but you would expect that the customer, like, what I'm trying to say is that I know that maybe we have a disagreement on this, Julius, but like my perspective of your customer as the lead of the manifest working group is the distributions, not end users. I know that some users do use the raw manifests because previously it was very hard to use a distribution for various reasons. But it doesn't negate the fact that the value that you provide is not really to end users. And I think it would be problematic if you tried to flip into that.
I'm not sure about the market share. We have some very large enterprises who are using the raw manifest, but we probably also have a lot of them using distributions. I know both cases. Yeah, that's the first thing, and we are trying to cater to the end users. I want to move in both directions. I want to make it, at least for some Kubernetes experienced guy, I want to make it possible to deploy it. Not for the average complete novice. That's not my task. That's distribution task, probably. Yeah.
It's more than just novice, right? Like, I think really good experts in Kubernetes work at big companies, right? They're not deploying Kubeflow for fun, right? They're deploying Kubeflow because they have an enterprise need for it or a student need, whatever. My request to you, and what I think we should do, is focus the manifest on trying to make it easy to make distributions, and that will increase the number of distributions.
That's something that's something we are focusing on as well. We have some companies willing to upstream the basic Helm charts, and then hopefully most distributions will use them.
As a distribution, I don't think that's what I want, and I don't think that's what most distributions want either. Like, like,
but
to
it
be
should
honest, as the biggest distribution, that's not what I want.
I mean, can we invite other distributions as well? I mean, I understand that you know, we need to make it simpler for them to adopt, and and that is why, like, from my personal perspective, the platforms, like the platform specific components, like profile or central dashboard, should live under manifest initially, or like in other repos, but maintained by the same people who
No,
building
so,
this.
so if they are, then they
Like, but this is I mean, we can discuss it like a separate.
like. I think actually the problem, and Julius, I want to get your feedback on this, because what I want to see is the distributions leading the manifest working group. Do you work for a distribution, Julius? Why, out of interest, can you explain why you're involved in Kubeflow? I actually don't fully know.
The companies I work for are very interested in deploying and using Kubeflow. And this is why I'm maintaining the manifest repository, and I'm also maintaining it on my own time. So to some degree, I'm paid for maintaining the manifest repository to make sure that they can directly consume it.
So I worry that that is a conflict of interest, because it encourages you to sabotage distributions while also providing the core thing that enables the existence of distributions.
I don't have a distribution. I just sell my time. I don't.
What you're saying to me though is that people pay you to use the raw manifests. That's a distribution in a technical sense. I'm not saying I'm not saying that this is a bad thing. I'm not trying to. All I'm trying to say is that maybe we should clearly delineate your roles. Like,
from my perspective, like Matthew, I think like we should just, I mean, manifest working group has a charter, right? We have a guardrails around this. For example, like manifest working group should not build the deployment specific tools like KFCTL, right? Like decide which applications to include in Kubeflow, right? We can review this out of scope, like a list of the manifest working group charter. And also, like, I believe Julius is not only the single person on manifest working group, right? We have another folks who might be active or not active right now, but we can, hear their opinion.
And these active folks are actually having their own distribution, Canonical, for example.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So different people will use Kubeflow differently. I just like, from my perspective, this should not be like our role. Like,
what shouldn't be our role?
To actually provide the value for ML, like to build an ML toolkit, like to provide the value for people who want to run ML on Kubernetes, right? Like,
so you're saying it should or shouldn't be the goal?
It should be the goal, like what Google originally proposed, like 7 years ago, right?
The Kubernetes ecosystem has changed a lot since then. Kubernetes is now just the cloud. You got to think of Kubernetes as, for a lot of companies, the cloud. It's an API, right?
No, but I mean, why Kubernetes was really successful, because like it simplified the resource orchestration in a portable and a simple way, right?
That initially, absolutely, but that's not the reason it's popular now. The reason it's popular now is because it's the only common compute API.
No, it's because of the ecosystem, right? It's because you have everything. If you want, like,
that's a contributing factor. But if Amazon had refused to make EKS, it would never have taken off.
That's right, but Amazon saw value in EKS because the building blocks of Kubernetes was successful. The building blocks of making the easy to orchestrate resources was successful, right? They didn't build EKS on top of Yarn or taking other like
it's a product that their customers wanted, but they didn't want it because it was Kubernetes. They wanted it because it was everywhere.
Yes, that's right. And like similar to Ray, like why Ray right now is so popular, because people see the value in Ray. People build the platform on top of Ray. Like it's everywhere right now. Ray on GK on EKS, right? And I believe for us as the community, if we build the value of the building blocks, like other vendors will sell the platforms on top. I don't really think, and this is my personal opinion, we should even build the platform at all. Like we should just
that's actually what I was literally saying. That, like,
but for that case, we need to completely remove all the multi-tenancy components and just be
Mm.
focusing on just the building blocks.
Well, that's not necessarily true. In the same way that there are pieces of the Kubernetes platform that are only useful to big vendors that are still part of upstream Kubernetes because they are better if they're common code.
Yeah, but I mean, Kubernetes is really like opinionated, opinion what should be part
Sure,
of.
yeah, I agree. I agree.
So,
Yeah, I agree.
Like the question is like where these platform specific components should live, right? And how much our time and energy we should invest. I mean, I cannot, ask people to not like develop these things if they, see the value of them, right? And I also agree that this help us to give an adoption. But we need to like also think about the building blocks, right? And the value of overall Kubeflow ecosystem, right?
I mean, those components that you talk about, we're planning to move them to a repo called Central Dashboard or Kubeflow Dashboard. That's fine. But like, and I will try and facilitate the inclusion of as many distributions in their development as possible, right? That's good. But I think it's important that we establish, and again, this is in the charter of the manifest working group, that the customer of the manifests is not users.
I don't think we have this in the charter, to be honest.
It
Like,
actually
maybe
is.
That users cannot use manifests?
No, not they can't use it, but more that the customer or the goal is to facilitate the aggregation of manifests for distributions.
No, but we don't have.
But
And what does it, for example, if distribution is only used by one company, is it then a user? Is it a distribution?
when you say distribution, can you clarify what you mean? So can you say what you said again? Just say it again.
Yeah, for example, if manifests are used to build a distribution for one company only, not a public one, do you still call it
fine. That's I think that is fine. I think that's a bit of a gray area when it comes to how resources should be allocated, like if there's ever a contention between enabling Amazon, Google, Microsoft, DeployKF, Canonical, Red Hat to make a distribution and some companies' specific desires, the people who are actually contributing back to the community, which theoretically should be the ones making money from it, should be the ones who have the say there, right? Because again, other people can just fork the repo themselves, right? It's not particularly difficult. They can make their own Helm charts. That's a distribution, right?
But I mean, Android is also paid for by Apple probably. So the ERF then would say it's the same conflict of interest that he somehow governs.
He's
Kate,
primarily
but I don't
involved
think so.
in component development. Am I wrong, Andre?
It's right. But
not platform. He doesn't sell a platform or even make a platform for Apple. He makes the components, Katib, and training and other things, right? Is that right?
Yeah, and then I'm also not selling a platform.
No. But my concern as a distribution is that I would like to facilitate. I want to make it easier for people to make distributions so that more people can adopt the platform.
Yeah, this is something I want to make it easier for distribution creators and users, not just one of them, but both.
Absolutely. But and I think you're more than welcome to participate, either make your own community or other things. But like, it's really, really problematic and dangerous for the project for you to use your position of power in the manifest working group to do something that might feel like it's, in the greater good. It's not like we're trying to carve out a way for people to make money. It's that the existence of Kubeflow depends on people making money from it. Like those components are Kubeflow, what Andre is saying. And as I said, there are two ways to get contributors. Users, very rare, incredibly rare that companies will allocate time. And honestly, those teams are getting fired from big tech companies at the moment. So what we're left with is commercial interests.
But Matthew, it's not so. Sorry. I think it's not right. Like again, if companies will see the value of components and they see that the Spark operator part of Kubeflow, for example, they will invest their time and they see that we clearly explain the Kubeflow is the ecosystem and you can use it differently. we will grow the community around
What
this.
you'll end up with
Go
is,
ahead.
And
yeah,
most of the most, I think many, if not most, of the contributions to Manifest are not directly from distribution owners.
that's because
They're
they're not using them.
independent.
Like,
They're Kimonas, of course, who has Canonical, but there are definitely a lot of independent contributors who are either paid by the company for doing it, and I know a few of them who are paid for contributing to Kubeflow without having their own public distribution.
that's because they're just using the manifest, right? And that's fine. And what I'm trying to say is that whether or not it's the current state, I think so. Like what I'm trying to say, we don't want to cede control to the distributions. I say that as a distribution. So like the thing that we distribute is a set of components, right? I get to control the end user facing experience. So I can brand it as whatever I like, right? But to make it so that people know that what they're deploying is Kubeflow, involving them upstream is important, you know?
But I mean, like, we cannot, like, you know, the goal of the manifest will give user something very basic that they can, users, developers, and administrators to play with, right? And to build distributions on top, right? They can maintain it internally, they can sell it, they can maintain it externally as, like, you know, sub projects, right? The goal of manifest work group, it's making, like, you know, it's not only to making distributions happy, at least right now on this stage we have, like, in 2024, right?
And what I'm saying is
Like,
the reason, like, okay, if that's the case, we need to rein it back in, because it's an actual existential threat to the project otherwise. Like if Canonical and Red Hat pulled out tomorrow, there would be no Kubeflow. It just simply would cease to exist.
No, but I mean, like, Matteo, like, I would disagree with you, because Kubeflow is not only about the platform. I mean, like, as I said,
Kubeflow would cease to exist. That does not mean that Kubeflow Spark Operator, Kubeflow pipelines.
no, but I mean, no, I mean, we cannot say, from my perspective, we shouldn't say the Kubeflow word by itself is actually the platform. That is why I want to have the product, you know, vision.
I'm not saying that we should,
like,
that is okay, that's what I mean when I say that, right? And so what
Mhm.
happened when Kserve got annoyed with us? They left, right?
Yeah, because like we don't give them a lot of, you know, visibility and the power to grow the community. And this was like the major problem. Like Google, like back in 2019, Google won't allow us to join CNCF, so we don't have like the open governments. And Kserve wants to have more components around this project, and they move out. It's not about like,
I'm saying that's good, and that's great for them. I'm happy for them. Maybe
No,
they
but-
maybe want to join again, but that's a separate discussion. But like what I'm trying to say is that users may continue to keep a few components alive, but it doesn't tend to work long term.
But it's your opinion, right?
It's not
Like,
my opinion. It's literally just what the world does, right? Like
No.
successful open source projects have either there's almost no examples of the other case. So all successful open source projects are in some way funded by the people who are making money from it. Without those people, the project doesn't exist.
That's
I
true.
know,
Good.
I know a lot of companies who just support open source, to be honest. From different contributors, we have a lot of them.
Name a
and they
single
go-
project that doesn't have more than one or more clear commercial products available, and that those contributors are not the majority of the contributors. Even one, just one.
No, I would have to look it up.
Linux, Postgres, MySQL, Terraform's complicated. Redis is complicated. Other ones. All I'm saying is that
No, but I mean Spark, even Spark right now, it's not like managed by Databricks. So Databricks, yes, they
have you
they
look at the contributor graph.
yeah. I mean, like, you know, like we have many committers from Spark core in our org. So some of the people actually, you know, like, it's not only driven by single company. And
Yeah, and I'm not saying that there aren't individuals. There are. Those people are amazing. That's what makes the projects work, to be honest. But in the end, people do have to eat, and this is a capitalist world. And to make these projects make sense, and also there's this other thing, which is that thinking of it from the perspective of a company, I don't want to adopt a tool that isn't going to exist in a few years. Like, this is actually the reason why Kubeflow has survived, I think, because while we were a bit of a mess for a while, we've controlled it now. We looked to the end user like we were going to keep existing because we had existed for so long. And that was why people ended up adopting a lot of our tools.
Yeah, but at the same time, like many users abandon the project because it's very we don't explain that this is not just a complex tool. Like we don't explain. I think I show you several examples, and like many people don't even know that they can use the ecosystem, like the specific components, because we're not explaining them properly on the documentation also, right? Like they go to install in Kubeflow, they see this manifest installation and the platform and like the distribution installation, and then they just get lost. It's back to your point, like before deploy KF, as you said, like other distributions was harder to install. Okay, that's fine. But at the same time, like we don't telling them that if you don't need the whole complexity of this, you can just use this tool, right? And that is why KServe became very successful, because KServe right now, many people view this as, separate community, and they can use it individually. And many people just use KServe from production without any other components and make it and build platforms on top. As I said, like similar to Ray. Like Ray is just a tool which you can build platforms on top, right? That is why I believe, like in Kubeflow, we can do the same, right? We can make a building blocks which people can build platforms on top, right? And that won't be controlled by us, right? It will be controlled by other like distribution vendors, right? Like you or other people.
So like what I'm saying, like, and so this is correct. This is kind of what I was trying to suggest. Like I don't know what your personal interests are, Julius, but like, if you want to come and work with me on Deploy KF, you're more than welcome to help, or even be, we'll talk about it, but other things like, but I don't want to leave manifest with no maintainers. And so I think as long as we can ensure that we bring it back to saying, okay, let's get all the distributions in the room together. Because again, Deploy KF is not going to be the only distribution. OpenShift exists, Canonical exists. I hope that some of the other big managed vendors come back.
Yeah, go ahead, Julius.
I totally understand the goal of making money distributions, and it's totally valid and it should be done. Yeah. But for me to work on Deploy KF, it would have to be under the Kubeflow / whatever umbrella. So it should be under the governance of the KSC. Then I can work on it. I do a lot of open source stuff, and this makes me, I think, in the long term attractive for some employers. And I also do it because I think it adds some value to humanity. Yeah. It's not that I'm against the distributions. I also do most contributions are on my free time.
I respect that, and trust me, I know I do the same thing. Don't get me wrong. Like, we're all here out of the goodness of our heart. But what I'm trying to say is that if what you care about is Kubeflow, then we need to facilitate commercial ventures around Kubeflow. And this is separate to what we're saying, Andre.
So I think, Matthew, like I agree. So if you think that we don't have enough guardrails around the manifest working group, we can definitely have it. Like if you see any potential threat, what happening across manifest working group, we can discuss it separately.
Well, it should be up to the distributions. Like what I'm saying is,
yeah, but I just want to say you cannot commit. Like we need to speak with other people as well, right?
I'm not the only distribution. That's what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that my suggestion for the manifest specifically is that we I'm happy to is that what we do is we get the distributions in a room. Of the ones which are actually interested in still continuing to sell a product, that has to be a requirement. They all get one seat on the manifest working group. I'm happy to say that Julius, even as a non-distribution, should probably stay there, both for historical and to represent the users who use it directly. But I think the balance of power should be, it is explicitly in the charter, but just in the so of course, these people would have to commit engineers. you know what I mean, to actually help maintain it. You know what I mean? That's what I'm saying. But
Yeah, but then they can commit engineers and can become maintainers, independent of whether they are owning a distribution or not. If you have them there, I'm totally happy. We can guide them, we can mentor them, we can see that they become maintainers as well. But it shouldn't be dependent on whether they are distribution owners. It
No, but
should
the
depend on
customers-
their contributions.
what I'm saying is that like the user of your tool, the only within the guardrails of the community allowed user of your tool. I know that there are some users directly using it, and we could say that they're making custom distributions, whatever. But as a community, we should not push people towards new users towards using the manifest. That's why we have that warning, because we don't want to support them, and because for an end user, that's just not the best experience for
But
Kubeflow.
Maciej, when you say we, who exactly do you mean? Like, do you mean you, or like you
Well,
mean like
I'm
the
not
community?
anyone. I'm speaking in the community sense. Like we as a community currently.
Yeah, but you represent your opinion, right? Like people in the community might have a different opinion, right? Like,
Sure. I mean, some people might have different opinions. Yeah. That's valid.
so I mean, like, Maciej, do you think, like, I mean, rather than saying we,
But like, let's play this out. Do you seriously think that Red Hat / IBM is going to say, yeah, we want people to not adopt our paid product and instead adopt the raw manifests?
I don't want to make a statement for them. I want they, make a message for us, and we can,
You're never going to get them to say stuff like that, though. Like,
No, but I
you
mean,
have to
like,
understand that looks really weird for a company to say stuff like that.
I just want to say we shouldn't say something like, for other people. Like, we don't know like what their perspective on the project, right? Like, we agree that all of us want to make Kubeflow successful and we have a different goals, right? But unless we find an agreement, across active people who are actually developing these tools, we cannot do whatever we want, right? That is why I didn't push my change directly to upstream, right? I want to find agreement across all the people in the community. And similar to this manifest discussions, yes, we have this perspective, and this is a valid concern. I agree with you, and we should raise it. But like, instead of saying what community wants, we need to first of all collect the feedback, right? I hope that makes sense, right?
So again, there are two groups in the community. There are users and people who are making money, right? There's two groups of people. There's also a third group of people individually contributing, but that's pretty rare. They're usually a user.
So what do you mean? Like, you mean like rare?
Someone wanted to talk, it looked like in the chat. Raj? Dahara?
Yeah, so sorry, I see Matteo and Josh, you still here. Maybe you have your own opinion on all this discussion.
Yeah, no, I was hearing it was a very interesting discussion, at least for me as a relatively newcomer, was very informative. There are some things that I prefer not to comment on simply because I'm very new, and let's say I believe that I cannot make an informed comment. There is one thing that, however, I think it speaks to at least the experience from community-wise. So I'll just tell you, this is just very anecdotal, so take it for whatever it is. But some weeks ago, I was at the local conference, Python conference, and there was like an MLOps track. And in one of the MLOps tracks, one of the companies, like an Italian company doing their own business with machine learning, whatever. So there was this MLOps engineer that explaining how they're doing all the things with Vertex AI. And sure enough, there is a question from the audience that says, oh, you are showing here a great use case for Vertex AI, just naming one name, but not specifically calling out to the specific product. So the question was, aren't you afraid that the provider of such a solution, such managed service, one day may decide to close because this person from the audience was using another product from another vendor, and sure enough, that managed service was closed. And I could perceive that in the audience, there were two camps of sort of like MLOps engineer or MLOps architect people. The folks who recognize that if you buy into one of, you could say maybe it's like managed services, a package, and a key turnkey solution, it's like if you do your business just on top of that, tomorrow they may decide to take away the keys on that, and then before you will have the problem. And there are other people who are less concerned because they say, oh, actually we're using this platform, this distribution, this managed service, whatever we want to call it. The moment that one closes, we need to be sure that you can move it out. So I think that from a paying user point of view, you have, at least I could see with my own eyes, these are really two different camps. There is one thing that, however, is like one thing that I like that I think Andre is like from Andre's proposal that somehow get lost between the messaging and the sort of like the experience from a technical point of view is like, if I'm, let's say that I was like an attendee at that conference, and the people like the one says like having to look about using Kubeflow instead of such and such, right? The first thing that I will do, sure enough, is to go to Kubeflow website and see, okay, how do I get started with that, right? So of course, you're very welcome to give a link to the distributions or the platform as they are, because it's a easy way for them to try it out if they have someone to spend. But I think there is value in having kind of like a link to say, hey, it's like, here is what you can do to try it out in a box, say locally in your Kubernetes. And here is like, if you're all interested in more specific components, and here is how you can try them out. And it can be even just a very short link with the short paragraph with links to other installation pages. Because at least to me, the first time that I approached the Kubeflow website, I thought, oh, just to try that one, I need to do all of these things or pay for a distribution which may not include all the components. So this is something that I believe that there is two aspects for it. One is like how you structure the pages and what it actually can do. And one is the message that you want to sell, which I believe is bigger than me. And let's say I'm not here to comment on that. But what I think that there is a value a lot in what Andre was proposing is that you can give the people coming to the website the full assessment of what they can do as a first step. It's like, go to one of the distribution, install the full manifest or try component in isolation. At least this is my perspective from a community user point of view.
Thank you, Matteo.
Yep. And to some extent, both proposed updates to the pages do that. My concern is still that, I think the majority of users, the friction required to get started is so high for even the individual components that a distribution is still going to be a better experience for them.
But this is wrong.
Is it though?
It's wrong.
Only 1,000 companies have adopted DeployKF in the last 3 months.
I'm talking about it's wrong that it's hard to install. Like, it's easier to use training operator than Ray, because Ray has a control plane.
Okay, fine. Okay, training operator is such an edge case though. Like, it is a single control.
But it's a whole it's a whole life cycle story in ML. I mean, it's a whole kind of story around the training, right? If you need to train your models, right? Like, how are you going to train them, right, on a large scale, right? So the problem is today only with pipelines, which doesn't support multi-tenancy, which I said before.
And notebooks as well, and notebooks.
I mean, you can make it work. You can make it simpler working with the pipelines team to install and to use with a multi-tenant environment, right? And it's mostly the problem of Mineo and API server. So you can just contribute, right, and make it work as a default, right? Or maybe create an installation. So previously we provided an installation for people who want to use Postgres with KTIP, or maybe you want to use custom database with KTIP for metrics, right? We provide these overlays in the upstream, and people can just install it in the one single command, right? Using the kubectl -k.
That experience is not great. To be clear, DeployKF lets you do this already, but like,
but I mean,
because everything's a config. Like, all I'm trying to say is that it's not about DeployKF or not. It's about not losing users before they even start.
I don't think we will use users. I think like
we already lost almost every user before they started.
No, we lost because like we confuse them of the complexity of the project. So that we lose them because we tell them on the introductory page that the project is complex, but it is wrong. Like, ecosystem is not complex. Like, if you need pipelines,
no,
yes,
we don't say that the ecosystem is complex. We just say that raw manifests are.
Yes, but yes, that's true. Raw manifest is like very hard to maintain, update, and manage. That's true.
Which is dangerous. That's what I'm saying. So not the overall platform. We don't say the overall platform is complex. So maybe we should move that from to another page. Maybe that's a good question. But because it might confuse
manifest, which is part of Kubeflow. That is why people decide to use distributions, because distribution is easier way to install Kubeflow platform, right? but like which like it's not hard to deploy the individual components if we kind of like not
If you
talking about
exclude notebooks and pipelines, which happen to be by far the biggest components, yes. Okay, sure.
no, but I mean, anyway, I need to drop. So I feel like I can summarize these discussions. I mean, we can like wait to find agreement, and I'm happy to, you know, incorporate your feedback, Matthew, like about 2 separate pages and the table. It's a good point. I think we can work together on the one PR and make the final decision, right? Like where we want to like have these sections. And
I think it probably does need to be we should try and involve the distributions and other commercial interests.
absolutely, yeah, I agree. I agree. So let's maybe wait.
Who is the active distributions, do we think? So I know from my current knowledge of people currently selling stuff, you've got myself, you've got Canonical, you've got Red Hat, and you've got Nutanix. I don't think anyone else is currently active. Is anyone I've forgotten?
So I know that Ricardo was working with some of them for the release, so we can try to ask them to, you know, attend next call.
But we need to actually know what we're asking them, right? Like
I mean, like at least like the manifest, like whether we should endorse people to use manifest as the installation. Like this is the question, right? Like
they're gonna say no, right? Like,
I mean, the question is like how they want to like us as a community to maintain the manifest bundle, right?
well, I think maybe a better question is how can we make the manifests make your life easier?
Okay, I mean,
you know what I mean? That seems like a more actionable question. Like, you
but
know,
it's separate. Yes, that's true. But it's separate, right? Like we can do it like next as a next step, right? You know, after speaking about this composability, right? So, and I agree we should have a conversation with the distributions around this. Yeah, and maybe making like this like every seat in the month. So in the manifest working group, so we can speak about it separately.
It's an interesting question. Like maybe we could even use some clever stuff to be like, you have to contribute to the upstream projects to get a seat and things like that. But you know,
yep, that's
because you want more contributors to your components, right? So
there actually is a charter, for example, Kubeflow/manifest. There's a charter on what you have to do to become maintainer. And this should be independent. You have to fulfill the charter. Instead, it doesn't matter whether you're distribution owner or not. You have to make enough contributions to be, proposed as maintainer. This is how we did it. This is how it was discussed with Kimonos as well. And we should follow this and not make any decisions there based on how much money one corporation is bringing in there or not bringing in, or whether they own distributions or not. It should be really, I really value independent contributors in general.
To be clear, those additions were made
independent
by Kimonos. The original charter was not, did not include such requirements. But in any case, whether or not the contributing code aspect requires specific mechanics, that's fine. The interest, though, should be given, interest as in like influence, should be given to the people who we want it to have, is what I'm trying to say.
I think the influence should be given to people who are developing Kubeflow, whether they are owners or distribution owners or whatever.
So I think that means the components. I think that should not mean the manifest.
But like that is why manifest, I believe, should maintain its, you know, central dashboard components, like the multi-tenancy components.
I think that even confuses it even more. But like the two groups of people who should have influence in the manifest are the users, who should be distributions. Maybe there's a couple of individuals as well. But you're like the level of influence you have in the manifest, because they affect everyone, should be determined by the amount of contributors you give to the other upstream components, maybe, you know, or something like. But I mean, maybe we also just want to make it as easy as possible to make a distribution. So I don't know, but.
No, I think this is corporate interest more or less taking over the project. Because this is exactly what shouldn't happen. You shouldn't give influence based on that.
Based on contributors?
No, based on contributing, but not on based on being a distribution.
No,
this
no,
is not some...
that's what I said. The first option was you say, you know, it's hard to finesse the solution to what we want, but you could say, you know, if you contribute to the notebooks, pipelines, and other working groups, you get to have a seat on the manifest. But again, I think that may still hurt us more than it benefits us. Because again, the goal should be that we make a make it easy
I
for
think-
distributions to exist.
I think exactly the opposite. You should get a seat on Manifest if you contribute to Manifest. You should get a seat on KTIP if you contribute enough to KTIP, and so on. And the same
For
goes
the normal
for
components, that makes total sense. But for manifests, like, if it's too hard to make a distribution, distributions won't exist. And if distributions don't exist, people won't, the amount of contributors to the components will disappear.
No, I don't think it's 100% true, Matthew, because if people use components not as part of distributions, right? So Bloomberg guys will still contribute to Kserve. For
Sure.
example, we will still contribute to training operator because, you know, like it's the goal of using these components in production, right? It's like it's no reason to just abandon them, right? Even that distributions won't care about them, right? So
Yeah, and some of those people will stay, and that's great.
not some of them, majority. Like majority of the people who active in these components are actually using them in production. If you're speaking about training operator, Spark operator, model registry, Kserve, model registry, okay, it's a new project, but Spark operator, training operator, like our most active person from Yuki, right? So he's actually using this in production for large models to train LLMs, right?
That's great.
And
that's not. I'm not saying that that's going to change. What I'm more saying is that users that don't fit into this hyperscaler category would never join otherwise. Right? They're going to end up using it through a distribution. But
anyway, so I think like let's have a follow-up. I think I can summarize some of these topics in the PR. I can adopt some of your feedback as well, Matthew. And let's invite maybe distributions on the discussion and have a follow-up about the manifest installation page. So anyway, I have to drop. Thank you, by the way, for your time. I appreciate it. I think like the goal of all of this is just to make the project successful. And I mean, at least I can speak from my side. I don't have any kind of commercial interest because I don't sell anything related to Kubeflow, right? I just want to grow the community. I just want to explain the people the power of what we're building for the last 7 years. And I want to Kubeflow be in the leading, age of everything which is happening AI related on Kubernetes, right? And this is
and
the
I agree
goal.
with these goals. I just want to
Like-
also say my last point is this, which is that you can give a final statement as well. Sorry, but what
No
my
worries.
point is, I want the project to continue existing.
And it will. Like from my perspective,
Well,
it will.
like let's say you leave your company.
Okay.
You might decide to continue contributing on your own time. That's out of your own interest.
Okay.
But people should not be assumed to be continuous in an open source project. Companies should be, right? So the goal is, how do we keep those companies as continuing to say it's worth contributing, both to distributions and users, right? That's what I'm saying, those two rooms.
Yeah, and the components, right? Like similar why people invest in Ray, like why Google invests in Ray right now, right? So I mean, for me, it's like obvious. Anyway.
Anyway, thank you for your time as well.
Yeah, thank you for your time. I appreciate it really so much. Thank you, Matthew, Julius, Matteo. So speak to you soon. See you guys.
Thank you. Bye.